As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. It did not occur to me then or subsequently that a gathering in the Cabinet room just before a vital meeting on COVID strategy could amount to a breach of the rules. I repeat, that was my mistake, and I apologise for it unreservedly.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And in this episode, we're going to have a look at the trials and tribulations of the blithering buffoon, Boris Johnson. And as you may know, he has been handed a fine over the Partygate affair, where he was having parties after telling the rest of us not to do anything, not to go out, not to meet or anything like that. He meanwhile has a party, done a video about this before, where the Queen had to bury her husband and sit alone, and the night before Boris was in the garden with his chums having a piss up. But apparently that's okay. Not for us plebs, of course. But now things are getting worse. They've pushed for a new censure, an indication of whether it should go to the Parliamentary Scrutiny Committee on Standards. The vote was today. Well, let's take a look at this article. Yep, so there's two articles actually. We're going to look at both of them, but we'll start with this one. This is from the Telegraph. No, I lied. This one is from the Express. And this one is saying, Baker was right. This is Steve Baker. Baker was right. The game is up for Boris. Tories already seeking a new Prime Minister, says David Maddox. He's the political editor of the Express. Former Brexit Minister Steve Baker may have written the epitaph for the gravestone of Boris Johnson's political career. He may have written the epitaph, but the grave has been dug by Boris himself. The gig is up, Prime Minister, he said, after pointing out that anyone else in public life found to have broken the law would have either resigned or been sacked. Messages I've been getting throughout the debate on whether the Prime Minister should be referred for investigation by the Standards and Privileges Committee over Partygate suggest that the former Brexit Minister is right. This has been a cluster something. One senior insider texted me after an astonishing last-minute U-turn by the government to allow the Tory MPs a free vote on the Prime Minister's fate. Originally, Boris had asked them to stand by him. He had the whips out, trying to get the votes on his side. It hasn't been said, but the fact that he's allowed a free vote looks like he's trying to walk back the whip. If he'd have forced it, he might have lost even after whipping. And that would have been game over. If you lose a vote after whipping on a personal matter, would have in doubt there and then he'd have it to go. So he's made it. He's going to sort of save face. Oh well, it's a personal matter. It's a personal matter, and if that's the will of Parliament, blah, so be it. Rather than, well, I whipped you all into voting for me and you haven't, in which case he knows he's lost the party. So he had to walk that back. But anyway, added to that, Tory backbenchers had forced the government to ditch an amendment that would have put the investigation into the Prime Minister's conduct, including a fine, into the long grass. This was the second thing Boris has done. After the whip, and then he walked that back, then he said, well, we need to back this back. The police are still investigating. They haven't handed out all the fines yet. We need to delay this. Pushing it back. And then pushing it back until people forget about it. Then it becomes unimportant. Oh, and there's other matters and things. That failed as well. So that's 2 for 2 on the failure front, Boris. It's going to get worse. Sources have also suggested that the situation is set to take a turn for the worse for Mr Johnson, with as many as 4 more fines coming his way for Partygate transgressions expected. And as they rise in value, because the first one's 50, then it's like 100, then it's 500, and it rises up until eventually it's £10,000. So they've broken the law many, many times. His position is becoming untenable. One MP noted that the total chaos was reminiscent of the attempts to save former Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson when the government whipped Tory MPs to prevent him from being suspended for breaking lobbying rules, and they lost that whip, and that was because he was a chum of Boris's as well. Don't they, the ministers, remember that's what turned a summer of love with an amazing honeymoon period for the PM into a winter of discontent for the party, an MP blasted. After Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer gave an impassioned speech, another Tory MP texted to say, unfortunately for the PM, Starmer just gave his best speech ever in the chamber, in the privilege motion debate on his conduct, and the PM is not here. That's because Boris is currently 5,000 miles away, wherever, in India. A country that is backing Russia, and yet he's not moaning at them because that would require a spine. But he's not here. This is all going on when the Prime Minister is not here. And this guy here says, it's always dangerous times when the PM is out of the country. PM should never leave the country when there's any chance of a vote. They always lose it. They always blow it. The Prime Minister had hoped that his landmark trip to India to discuss a trade and security deal with a key ally would put things into perspective and show he is getting on with the job. Yes, he stands astride the world, the statesman that he is. He's a blithering idiot. He has left behind a political mess. If he'd have been wise, he'd have stayed, but he's not wise. The Tory MP who praised Starmer soon after confirmed that he would be voting against the Prime Minister, even though he feared all of us who do so will have targets on our back. He was not the only one, with the right of the party beginning to abandon the man who had delivered them Brexit. The intervention by former Chief Whip Mark Harper, followed by Mr Baker in the debate, had shown that he is rapidly losing friends. Both men led the resistance to lockdown rules with their COVID recovery group of MPs, which eventually forced the Prime Minister to ditch restrictions early after an embarrassing rebellion in December. It is understood that Mr Johnson would have been forced out earlier had he not met the demands of the backbenchers to move away from COVID restrictions before his scientific advisers wanted. Boris Johnson is living on borrowed time at best. The reason he's still there is because he lifted the restrictions. He hasn't said he doesn't want to return to them. He's made issue saying he doesn't feel its time is right, or we try not to, blah, 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 bullshit, because the man can't do anything without lying. But he is a dead man walking. He is a ghost of his future self, should we put it that way? And that is where he is now. And of course, actually where he is India, so he can't even answer this. An attempted coup in March only failed because the right of the party remained loyal. It was apparently saved by 2 votes, effectively 2 letters. 2 more letters had gone in. There'd have been a leadership challenge. But patience is running out. A former Brexiteer ally, an ex-cabinet minister, called to say Boris just can't lead us into the next election. It's a disaster. Meanwhile, Tory MPs and party insiders are looking for the next leader already. One message to say that Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi, who was a vaccines minister, is the dark horse in the race. An unfortunate choice of words, perhaps. He doesn't have baggage. Boy done good, popular, good media performer. I reckon the others would destroy each other and he nicks it. Others are pushing Home Secretary Priti Patel to step forward after winning over many critics on immigration with her Rwanda scheme. She has done nothing. Priti Patel has done nothing. She's talked and talked and talked. She's had all that time in power. She's talked about immigration and achieved nothing. And she is the Home Office, minister. She is in charge of the Home Office. She is the one ultimately responsible for male policemen strip searching female prisoners, female suspects. She's got a lot of baggage. She doesn't know what's going on in her own department. You want her running a country? I don't think so. She is said to be hesitating. Yeah, because she knows she'd be destroyed. The moment she put her head above the parapet, she would be destroyed. A Techni UK poll for Express Online shows that the Cabinet Ministers of Defence, Ben Wallace, is the favourite, with 16% of the public support, and 25% of Tory voters. With Foreign Secretary Liz Truss also popular, I will put my hat in the ring and say that I think Liz Truss would probably be the best choice. But in these unpredictable times, if Mr Johnson is forced out by 1,000 cuts, then there could be a surprise winner. It could be, but I think it is time to go. However, I'm going to pause the video here and I'm going to flick over to another article, and then quite quickly we'll round this down. But I think this other one is interesting as well. So this is in the Mail, and again the headline: Boris Johnson faces another damaging Partygate probe after a shambolic U-turn. Should point out, another shambolic U-turn. The PM, who is 4,000 miles away in India, capitulates to Tory rebels and withdraws opposition to parliamentary investigation into claims he misled the Commons over law breaking. Basically, he keeps turning it around. He keeps saying, we'll do this, we'll do this. Oh, damn, no, we won't, because it's going to be unpopular. He said, we'll fight this. And then he said, no, we won't, because he knows he's going to lose. And we've discussed this earlier. But it's just there. The Prime Minister told reporters on a trip to India he would lead the Tories at the next election in 2024. No, he won't. It comes after he ordered his MPs to delay a new investigation into Partygate until the police finish probe. They refused. Mr Johnson could face further fines for another event in November 2020, and others, MPs fear, because he can't help himself. He just has to keep having the piss-ups. And it is alleged that this was a party to celebrate the departure of Dominic Cummings after an aide was forced out. Cummings won him the election and then worked with him closely. And then Princess Nutnut, Mrs Boris Johnson, don't like that Dominic Cummings. So Dominic was given the elbow, and then Dominic just went, fine, bang, 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 revelation, revelation, revelation. Dominic Cummings knows exactly where the bodies are buried, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was the one who handed all the information over to the police. And if he has, good on him, I don't care. I was very much pro-Boris. I like Boris. Didn't realise how toxic he was, and how stupid he became. But that's what happens when you get involved with a green nutter, and then marry her, and then have another child by yet another woman. Thinks with his dick. Anyway, the particular part here that we went down into is this. Yes. Deputy Labour leader Angela I Can't Read Rayner said, this is humiliating for Conservative MPs who were being pressured to vote for the government's cover-up amendment. The government knew they couldn't win this. The Prime Minister is banged to rights. Tory MPs should do the right thing, respect the sacrifices that their constituents made during the pandemic, and vote in the national interest. And that, my dear friends, is the first time I have ever agreed with Angela Rayner, the idiot. It's frightening times. How low must Boris fall that I'm agreeing with Angela Rayner? Anyway, I'm going to come up and round this off, otherwise I'll be here all day. Well, there we are. I mean, I honestly think Boris has dug his own grave on this one. There's nothing he can do. He's the one having parties. He's the one lying to Parliament. He's the one U-turning, flip-flopping, telling people do this, telling people suddenly don't do that instead. He hasn't got a clue. He hasn't shown any leadership on this. He's losing the party. He's losing the country. If the Tories want to have any success whatsoever, and I said this about 2 weeks ago, if they want to survive the local elections in May, they need to ditch the buffoon immediately. He's now a liability. He promised so much, and many people felt he could deliver. And it's just been one awful decision after another. And I think he's now got time to make one good decision. And that decision is to resign. And he's got to do it for the good of the party, for the good of the country, and ultimately I think for his own mental health, because I think he's under great pressure. He's going to sit at home, he's going to look at Princess Nutnut, he's going to sit there looking at her, realising he's in this position because of her. She organised that party, she made me go the green agenda, she made me spend thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds doing this horrible little flat up in Downing Street, and then that's come out, oh, I've had to pay that myself instead of getting that paid because of other... Everything that's gone wrong with Boris Johnson's premiership can be pointed to Princess Nut. So he'll learn to loathe her, and that'll be yet another ex-Mrs. Johnson with a child off out in the wild somewhere that he never knows about. Time to go, Boris. Pack your bags. Thanks. Bye. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the bell for notifications for future output. Leave a like. Leave a comment. And until next time, dear friends, stay safe, stay well, and goodbye.